Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Why Your District's Families Are Frustrated with Your Customer Service. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is recorded and we'll email everyone a copy of the recording as well as the report. You can also use the chat function to introduce yourself and share any questions or comments. We also have the Q&A function open, so you're welcome to use that as well to ask any questions. But now I would love to hand it over to Krista Coleman, our Chief Customer Officer at K12 Insight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. First of all, thank you for being here today, especially since you guys are in your spring break mode. Some of you are just coming off of spring break this week, in fact, and others might have had a long holiday and celebrated spring break a different weekend. I think about this as we do each of these webinars and just how fast time is flying. I mean, wasn't it just winter holiday season and I was getting ready and sending you off for the holidays, and now here we are with prom and graduation upon us, and then of course summer and summer school will be right around the corner. So first of all, thank you for joining us. I know you have full schedules, and so we aren't going to waste any more time. We're going to jump right in. I'm Krista Coleman. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at K12 Insight. And joining me today is my colleague, Dr. Kate Shoulders. She's the Senior Director of Research here at K12 Insight. Want to come off mute for a minute, Kate?
Sure. Hey, thanks so much for having me, Krista. Great to see everyone here today.
For those of us who have been with us before, this is a duo you should be familiar with. As usual, I'm going to kind of walk you into what we're going to be talking about today, and then Kate's going to take a deep dive with you through the data. But today's webinar is really part of our quarterly webinar series where we dive into the findings from our national report on customer service in schools. So to kick us off for 2023, we are exploring, sorry, I got it. As you know, this is live because I literally did just get choked up there. To kick us off for 2023, we are exploring what families experience when they reach out to their schools or school districts, and what happens when they can't find answers. We're also going to be sharing a surprising number of families who don't even know where to go to get information from your school or school district. And then finally, we're going to talk about what families think about receiving automated responses. I know, for you sharing opinions, we go back and forth on like this automated response and how do we still have great service, right? And have automated responses, but I think the results are going to surprise you. Our goal for you today is to walk away from the webinar with 3 key takeaways. First, you're going to gain a better understanding of how families experience interactions with their school district. Second, you're going to learn how parents' ability to find information impacts their Net Promoter Score directly. If you missed the Net Promoter Score webinar where we talked a lot about this, don't worry, Dr. Shoulders is going to revisit that during her section of the webinar. And finally, you'll discover strategies for helping your family find information faster. And the big bonus here, it's going to also save your staff's time. So be sure to stay with us through the entire webinar so that you can learn more about these valuable insights and how you can bring them back to your district right after the webinar, okay? So let's dive in. We're going to kick things off by hearing from you. I know, for those of you who've done this with me before, you always have to jump in and give a little bit. So you're not going to have to come off camera. You're not going to have to talk, but if you could jump into the chat for just a second. And if you are the person at your school district that manages a lot of the communications, meaning when people reach out, you're always answering any of that engagement, tell us in the chat your best estimation of how much time you'll spend each day answering questions from your families, students, or staff members, okay? Could be 1 hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes. If it's not you who handles or manages that, then think about the person in your district who does do that and put their estimate in. Okay, just an estimate. There's no wrong answer. My chat is not appearing. So are we seeing some, Kate?
I just saw one that said 1 to 2 hours.
Wow.
and here's about an hour, 1 to 2, 2 to 3. And it's interesting. I always think as I'm seeing you all type this 2 to 3 hours a day, do you like section that, like in the morning with my coffee, I'm going to devote 30 minutes, at lunch, I'm going to devote 30 minutes, or is it one of those things where it's like constantly pinging you all day and you're, like rat killing? I think they say, when I was in Arkansas, we say like, are you just rat killing all day? Like, how do you, here's 6 to 7 hours. So how do you, I'm curious as to how people disperse that, and you don't have to necessarily answer, but that's always what I think, like, how are you chunking that so that it doesn't, here's one that says interruptions throughout the day.
Yep. 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, all day long. You can't even add them up sometimes, or that's how you finish your work day by doing this. So remember some of these responses, because we're going to revisit this at the end of the webinar and tell you how you actually can get some of that time back. But first, let's just try to think together and imagine all the interactions that are coming in your district. So let's just say you're a 10,000 student or more school district. This can easily turn into more than 26,000 interactions in a school year. As you know, this turns into a lot of time spent answering the questions and a lot of energy connecting, right, your families and your community with the right departments. Without an intentional approach for customer service, it can be challenging for you to know how every interaction is even being handled throughout your district. And number 2, and most importantly, are your families even satisfied with the service they got or the answer they got? So to give you a deeper dive into the how families experience, similar to your district, it's my pleasure to hand it over to Dr. Shoulders, who will dive into the data we collected from our national report on customer service in schools.
Thank you, Krista. And again, thanks everyone for joining us today. Let's talk a little bit about the survey itself at first, so you can see where we are getting this data from. We do this quarterly survey, and in our most recent survey, we surveyed 1,511 parents and guardians across the nation who have children enrolled in K12 public schools. The survey was distributed via social media, which means we reached families who are digitally savvy and are regularly using that social media. In our survey, we wanted to find out why parents and guardians contact their district and understand their frequency of reaching out and better understand their expectations for those interactions with their school or district office. We also looked at the differences in responses amongst 3 categories of parents and guardians: detractors, passives, and promoters. And we identify those using the Net Promoter Score, or NPS, which Krista alluded to earlier today. So for a quick refresher that she promised I would give, NPS measures the likelihood of a customer recommending a brand or place of business. So every time you see that on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this to a friend? That's a business collecting NPS. There are 3 categories, as I mentioned: detractors, and they are likely to be outspoken in their dissatisfaction with the district. Passives are likely to be quietly happy with their district. And then lastly, promoters, who are likely to be actively and outspokenly recommending their district to their family and friends. While NPS is most frequently used in corporate settings, measuring NPS in school districts has been shown to help districts better understand parent satisfaction, factors related to voluntary student attrition, and parent perceptions of district communication. Now that you're up to speed on the survey itself, let's take a look at what it revealed. The first finding, and the one that I find to be most impactful from the survey, was that 1/3 of parents and guardians report not knowing where to go when they have an inquiry, issue, or service need. 1/3. This naturally results in frustrated families along with significant administrative overhead. Remember, we surveyed parents who have access to social media, so this finding shows that even digitally savvy parents don't know where to go for answers. So we can assume that those who aren't as digitally savvy are struggling just as much or more so than these digitally savvy parents. So 1/3 of parents, what does that actually look like? If you imagine a school district with an enrollment of 30,000 students, according to our report, that would mean approximately 10,000 parents would not know whom to contact with their question or concern. This could result in 10,000 misdirected emails or misplaced phone calls that school staff would need to respond to in order to direct that parent to the correct resource. So think again of those hours that you were talking about, the 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 3, 6 to 7 hours all day long. How many of those are either being redirected and that's how you get them, or you're then having to redirect them? As you can see, that's a ton of undue pressure, time, and attention that these contacts are adding on to you and your school staff as you're trying to reroute those inbound communications. That leads us to our next finding. We found that as the number of times a parent contacts a district about academics or student behavior increases, parent perceptions about the courteousness of your responses decreases. Which makes sense, right? If a parent is having to make more contacts about the same topic repeatedly because they don't know who to contact at first, they're going to get frustrated. And it's not unreasonable to think that staff members may become less courteous as well as they communicate with increasingly frustrated parents. This is why it's essential for school districts to reduce the number of contacts needed to get answers and ensure that every interaction is one that's filled with courteousness. Let's take a look now at these experiences in terms of NPS. Remember, parents are categorized as detractors, passives, or promoters. Of those parents who reported a lack of clarity as to where to go to direct their inquiries, approximately 2/3 of them are characterized as detractors or passives by NPS. This means that if questions and concerns go unanswered, or if there is a delay in response time, this could be associated with diminished perceptions of your district's ability to provide excellent customer service. However, there is a bright spot. Parents who are able to get to the right person or resolve an answer or resolve an issue or answer a question, they actually give their districts higher net promoter scores than parents who are not able to find the right person. And as a reminder from our previous report released last November, we learned a high net promoter score is related to fewer families considering leaving your district. That's why it's essential for your district to ensure families know who to reach out to when they have a question or concern and are served well with every interaction. Now let's look at our final key finding, which contains some good news for you and your team's workload. When we focused on the top 13 parents, or the top 13 topics that parents contact their schools about, we found that on 8 of these topics, over half of the parents preferred an immediate automated response over a response from a live person within 24 hours. And across all 13 topics, at least 43% of parents preferred that automated response. So I know we saw one participant on our webinar today say that they're constantly having contacts come in, and some of those are having to go to voicemail. That these voicemails would be those ones that you're trying to get back to within 24 hours, right? We find that this high number of parents interested in immediate automated responses is encouraging. Given the number of parents preferring automated responses, it's expected to grow, right? More and more of the children who grew up as digital natives are now becoming parents with children in school. This means your district has an opportunity to embrace those digital tools that are available, like chatbots and self-service options, to help your families find information when they need it while reducing that burden on you and your district staff. Those were the synopsis of our findings overall. I'm going to hand it back to Krista now, who's going to share ideas for bringing this data back to your district.
Thank you, Dr. Shoulders. Before we actually jump into Q&A, I want to just first talk about how amazing it is to actually see how many families are open to new ways of communication with their school districts or their schools. Remember at the beginning of the webinar when I asked you to share how many hours you spend each day answering questions from your district community? Well, we talked to a former superintendent from Florida, Mike Grego, who shared with us an important takeaway from his time in education. He estimated his principal spent at least 2 hours a day tracking down the right people to answer questions, and that school staff and administrators could save as much as 10 hours a week, depending on grade level, with the help of automation. It's clear that districts have an enormous opportunity to implement systems that create efficiencies for staff while also ensuring families get the information they need. Okay, So I promised you 3 opportunities. I promise you we'll get to any questions you might have. But let's just talk about things that you can do today after you leave this webinar. Number 1, make it easy to contact the right person in your school district. When you make it clear to your families where to go for information, you're already reducing the number of touch points needed to get an answer. You're already winning. Number 2, remember every touch point matters. From the interactions, from the time these students get on the bus with the bus driver to the front office staff, every touch point is an important opportunity to provide superior customer service district-wide. Also, let's make sure that your staff is equipped to handle, right, all the customers that are coming at them. There's lots of opportunity for professional development to work to kind of up-level those skills, because it's different type of skills that are needed for today's community members, and we all know that. And lastly, embrace automation. I mean, what Dr. Grego said, right? How much time we can save. We're no longer living in a time where parents are willing to just jump through hoops or go through 9 different people to get the right answer, right, to their questions or to get to the right person. Putting system in place for automation is a game changer, and it'll make it easier for your families to get answers. Not only that, it's going to give your staff more time back during their day. Additionally, automation helps prevent the misrouting of communications, right? There's nothing worse than somebody going through all these different channels and still can't get the right answer, right? Or parents misidentifying the right source for the information, right? They keep asking the wrong department. I hear that from our HR teams all the time. If they get this bucket of questions that doesn't belong in their department. When you get people to the right place and you get them the right answers, not only you improve your customer service, you're building trust with your stakeholders and your community. So what's next? Start learning how you can deliver superior customer service. You can download this report and read it. That's what's most important, right? We shared with you a high-level view, but read it. We'll email you a copy of this report and the recording from today's presentation after the webinar. The most important thing you can do for your district is to share what you've learned today with other colleagues, right? Not just at your school district, but throughout education. We're all needing the same help. Finally, if you need more support and you're like, Krista, this is great. I would love that you and Kate shared this, but we need some help personally here at our school district. Our team would love to support you. So please reach out to us and we'll meet and discuss how to get you started. Okay. And now, any questions that you all have for us? Kate and I are taking a pause, so if you have any questions at all, pop them on the screen. We're happy to answer. How is it possible to track every interaction happening across my district? A great question. Many districts use different means to track the interactions that are happening in their district. We personally, of course, support the Let's Talk software, which allows us to track phone calls, walk-in interactions, and also, of course, any dialogues that come directly through our system. Our software kind of layers on top of the district website, and you literally push a button for the topic you want an answer to. And ultimately, all that data on the back end is presented in a real-time dashboard that is available for our clients every single day. Districts that don't have a lot Let's Talk software or have something similar, I believe, use a very similar method of tracking their interactions that way. And some of them are manually tracking. I've sat through and watched where there were days and days of where a superintendent said, I really want to know how many people are talking to us, and they had to do a manual one. And it took days and days to get it, but their biggest concern was by not having a software is that they even felt their data was outdated by the time they had gathered all of that. They felt like there had been new interactions happening that they hadn't tracked. Any other question? Do chatbots really help? families get accurate information. Well, chatbots, in most cases, I know the chatbot word can be a little scary, right? Because there's so many versions and there are some that districts are allowing and not. The chatbot that actually directly is connected to your website actually is only as good as the information that we fill it with. And so ultimately, not only do we preload with the most frequently asked questions, we also connect it to the FAQs that are already on your website, giving you an opportunity to not only automatically answer the frequently asked questions, it also shows you questions that come in that maybe should be added to your FAQs, and then we can automatically load those to your printed FAQs as well. But we're finding 33% of 33% of each of our districts on average do love a chatbot. We have parents who work 2 shifts. Maybe they're a nurse. We have flight attendants who are gone, for several days of the week, and they're asking questions from a plane. So it's really nice to be able to have the frequently asked questions at least available. And we have many districts who are expanding beyond their frequently asked questions to have each department load their frequently asked questions. And so that 33% of their district's community is being served. Why this is so important is we're living in a different day, and COVID, I think, made us where people are more impatient than ever. And I'm trying to say that very sensitively, but this everything going digital made it where people could get answers faster. So the accuracy, to just specifically talk to your question, really is going to be about how accurate of information we put in is the accurate information put out. But we're seeing our districts be really creative, and they're connecting to links that are, connecting them to documents that are forever changing and being updated so that they're increasing their accuracy. Any other questions? Both of those are very good. Okay, well, go ahead.
Sorry, Krista, I was just going to add a side note. As a non-digital native, I know that when chatbots first came out, I felt like they were cold and impersonable, but I know that's kind of shifted over time, right? Like, I know the folks at K12 Insight have done a lot of work in the personalities of chatbots, and that you can really make them personable, so you don't feel like it's just a cold answer, but there's a little bit more color in those, a little bit more flair in the responses that you can get from chatbots based on what you enter, which I think is a really cool spot to be.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Kate. I'm going to answer one more question, just because I saw Christie's come up with how nuanced can a chatbot be, as in, if a parent or student is asking the same question, would they get the answer that's tailored to each of them? It kind of depends. In our particular case, our chatbot can be tied to a topic. And if it's a student services or leadership, or, ultimately they've preloaded those questions for the student and for the parent. But typically the question itself, there'd be a little work to do to actually tailor it to the students and the parent, especially because it's limited to the FAQs. So if imagine someone going to your website and going to your FAQs, whether a student or parent is looking for that question and answer, it would be the same answer for both. So right now, if it says, if a student says, hey, can I see, I don't like your grading system policy because I was 1 point off for an A, and a parent might ask, what is your grading policy? It would send them to the same resource, except for because of AI and our ability to have those keywords direct the students the right question, it might send them to the department that actually is in the academic department that talks about the grading policy and the proper order to see your principal, then see your teacher, and so on and so forth. Whereas a parent might get the generic version of the student's grading policy at a school district. That might be the only nuance you'd see in our version of the chatbot. You're welcome. Any other questions before we lock you down and send you on your way? Okay. Thank you all for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about delivering superior customer service. I know you're giving good, but if you want to give superior customer service, this is what we do. And we have no problem meeting with you and helping you to get started today. We have a QR code, right? If you'd like to just schedule a free customer service workshop just for your district with K12 Insight, use that QR code, respond. I know we're putting some information in the chat as well. As a reminder, you're going to get a copy of this recording. You can fast forward to the part where I almost choked in front of you, but you're going to get a full copy of this presentation. You're also going to be able to download the report. Thank you again for joining. We know how valuable your time is. Have a wonderful rest of the week and a really amazing rest of the school year. And we'll see you back this summer for our next webinar.